right? And yay, there we go, right? And yay, there we go, right? Started getting an infinite loop there, sorry about that. Alright, hi everybody. How you doing? Welcome to the stream. Ooh, yay, okay. I gotta switch to this one. There we go. Here's the reading view. And how's everybody doing? Hello gamers. Just got the stream started and I posted up in a few different places that I was going to be streaming and asking people to come hang out. So we'll see. Just experienced a really annoying thing within a group of friends chat. So just, you know. I guess my shortcut here mutes. That's annoying. Please, hold on. Let me check here. Am I muted? Is that what that does? I don't see it. Alright. Hi. Alright. There we go. So, there. This gloomy look feels more like how I feel right now. But, yeah. We've read through. Whoa! Knocking everything over. Sorry about that. Sorry if that popped in anybody's eardrums. So we read 8 chapters of Ranma's Big Mouth, and I have what is essentially an unfinished chapter here. And I thought we could start with that. I have other stories after this, so maybe you don't remember what happened last time. Ranma was hurt, confused, and furious. She had already done one thing that she feels she'll regret for the rest of her life. And now she also had to quote-unquote man up and face Kazooie, all while she fights with her cheating mom and faces down her fiance. So this is after the party. There was a bunch of drinking. There was the scene with Ryoga at the end. And yeah. Let's start. Son looked down at his daughters as they sat in the living room. Son paced back and forth in front of them. Each one looked away from him, their faces visibly shamed. They were incapable of looking him in the eye. He wanted to scream at them. Instead, he just talked himself out to himself out loud, his actions punctuating his words. I know that I have not been as stern a father as I should have been. I gave each of you leeway, thinking that you were already mature enough to bear responsibility. Instead, I find my eldest drunk and passed out in her room, my youngest with vomit on her clothes from over-drinking, and the house littered with half-naked teenagers, all because my middle daughter wanted to make out. Nabiki winced at those last words were spoken. The feel of Kuno's hand on her head last night lingered like a phantom. Nabiki moved her hand through her hair, trying to dislodge the sensation. Though it eased the feelings of wrongness, the tension in her neck remained, sending pain shooting down her back whenever her head hit certain positions. She couldn't deny... Hold on. Okay. She couldn't deny her father the purpose of the party was partly influenced by her own libido. But Nabiki wanted to shout at him at how horrible she felt after what had happened to her. Instead, she just kept her head down, to not let her stomach turn over from his glare. Kasumi stood up after his rant, and while looking him in the eyes, she said softly, "Excuse me, father, I'll be busy today. So please do making your own breakfast. I apologize for the short notice, but I only just found out now." Soane sputtered and shouted that she couldn't go anywhere grounded. Kasumi turned around and said, "I'm not sure I'm young enough to be grounded, father." Soane sighed. His desire to collapse and cry nearly overcame him. His knees started to buckle, but he fought desperately the instinctual call of the ground. He looked at Nabiki, her eyes averted from him. He could feel that something more had happened last night, but he also felt that he would not be told what it was. With a sigh, he ordered Nabiki to her room. She left far faster than he anticipated. Akane sat quietly, waiting. The air outside hung heavy and oppressive. Akane looked up to her father, only to find him reading a newspaper. She looked around the house. Nabiki had gone upstairs. Kasumi had left. Ranma and Genma were no longer staying with them. Everything was silent, save for the chirping of cicadas outside and the gentle rustling of newspaper as her father turned a page. Akane cleared her throat. Slowly, her father lowered the newspaper until he could see her. Akane looked at her father and tilted her head. He looked at her. She pointed to herself. He looked at her. Finally she spoke. "Dad, what about me?" Sone's eyebrows furrowed deeply as he tried to understand what she was referencing. Finally he laughed lightly and said, "You should go take a bath." "Aren't I getting punished?" "Oh no, sweetheart, you're my baby girl. You just made a little mistake." "I'm not a little girl anymore." Sone's body jolted away from Akane as she screamed at him. Oh, sorry. "I'm not a little girl anymore." He stumbled, in finding a way to respond to her, and she got up and stomped off. Soane looked after her and let out a shuddering breath. He raised the newspaper up and continued reading it. Alright, we're going to take a little break here. Check on viewership. See how everybody's doing. How we all are. If you've hung out here before, feel free to send a message. Let me know how you liking the story so far. I'd really appreciate hearing from you guys. So let's go to the next scene. It's hard to form words with a chunk of flesh in your mouth. Everything comes out in vowels. Ranma woke up and tried to ask what's going on, but instead she said, "Girl." She was answered by a moan as the back of her throat squeezed the head of Ryoga's morning wood. Ranma pivoted her head to look at the face of the person groaning. Her eyes went wide as her motion finished off Ryoga's wake-up call. Ranma reflexively swallowed down what Ryoga presented to her as breakfast, the saltiness lingering in the back of her throat. Ranma silently thanked Miko or Kentaro, whoever managed to make sure Ryoga remained asleep. Gently, Ranma let the shrinking, satisfied, savory flesh exit past her slack-jawed lips. Once she was disconnected from Ryoga, she slowly got off his bed. The blanket slid off of her, leaving her naked body exposed to the morning air. Once Ranma was free from anything that could tug, jostle, or otherwise awaken Ryoga, she quickly got dressed and left his house. As she passed the gates, making sure his dog stayed in the property, Ranma finally left herself relax. Her mouth was dry and she licked her lips. Her tongue caressed a spot that still held the taste of her high-protein breakfast. Ranma felt a shiver travel down her spine. Her face flushed as she closed her eyes, trying to embed the flavor in her brain. If it was never going to happen again, she wanted to never forget it. The walk home in disheveled clothes, messy hair, and alcohol-infused breath was not an entirely lonely process. Ranma spotted one or two other women in a similar condition to herself. It was nice to know that other women could make the same mistake she made. Some people who were up this early, on the other hand, were not giving her approving glares. Ranma tried to ignore them. She got home to the smells of breakfast being made. Ranma sighed, her mind conflicted in wanting to eat her mother's cooking and wanting to keep Ryoga's taste fresh in her memories. She walked past the kitchen to get cleaned up. Her mother's voice rang from inside the kitchen, stopping Ranma and bringing her back to the kitchen. Madoka clucked her tongue once she got a clear view of Ranma. She shook her head and asked, "Were you fighting all night?" Ranma nodded. Madoka's nose wrinkled at the smell Ranma was emanating finally reached her nostrils. She asked, "Were you drinking too?" Ranma nodded and mumbled out an apology. Madoka shook her head. "Go clean up and change into a boy already. Just because your birthday is coming up doesn't mean you should be indulging in being a girl." Ranma nodded, apologized again, and proceeded to finish her intended goal to begin with, now under orders instead. Alright, that's another scene. Having like I said, this is an incomplete story, so there might be points where it doesn't make sense or there's a jump. And it's just because I write each scene and just move on to the next scene mentally. And sometimes, and then I usually have to go back, reread it, and rewrite certain sections, or after I get to a scene later, I have to go back and add why that scene would happen in the first place. Sometimes I miss it, like with Nabiki's missed lunch meeting with Ranma, and sometimes I catch it, so. Ukyo grimaced as the early morning light illuminated her downstairs restaurant. Shampoo and Akane had arrived not too long ago. Ukyo looked down to the message they received from Ranma early that morning, when the sky was gray and Ukyo still held a dream in her heart. Instead, the dream was being chipped away by the words on her screen. We all needed to talk. The girls' moods were equally distant, last night echoing in different ways for them. Ranma silently opened the front door. The whisper of the sliding door on tracks sounded like thunder in the quiet room. His face mimicked the mood the girls were in. Horrible realization you don't want to hear or come to grips with slowly reached through your guts to squeeze your insides until you cry out in the physical manifestation of your worst fears through you. Ranma stood there a moment before he slid the door shut. His demeanor managed to keep even Shampoo from jumping him. It seemed to permeate from him like a gentle chill that added a morbid sense of dread to the heat outside. The silence was finally broken when Ranma asked, "Why?" "We didn't want to hurt you," Akane spoke softly. "Shampoo no understand it bad," came Shampoo's response. Ukyo sighed from behind the counter. She looked into Ranma's eyes before answering. "I didn't see it clearly. I'm not even sure who it was with. I didn't want to say something wrong." "But it was wrong!" Ranma shouted the words instantly. He staggered back, trying not to launch himself at them. He grunted as he locked himself into place. Finally, he spoke again, forcibly and loud. "I trusted you. All of you." The girls winced as he looked at each of them in turn. His voice lowered as he continued. "If I can't trust you, then I can't be with you." Ranma left quickly, not wanting to be swayed by them. Shampoo stood up and walked out. Ukyo ran after her. "Wait, sugar!" Shampoo turned around and asked, "What want?" "I was hoping we could finish what we started last night. Maybe figure out a way to get Ranma back?" Shampoo shook her head. If this no get Ranma, then Shampoo is no part of group." Ukyo let Shampoo go and headed back into her restaurant. Akane was standing there, tears in her eyes. Ukyo walked up to hug her, but Akane didn't let her. Ukyo asked her what was wrong, and Akane took a deep breath before answering. "I have another confession to make." Ukyo backed off from Akane, giving her space to feel comfortable enough to talk. Akane looked up into Ukyo's eyes. I'm not ready to commit. Ukyo looked around. We're not exactly just seeing each other. Akane sighed. Even to this group idea that just failed. What are we supposed to be then? Akane shrugged. I don't know, okay? All I know now that I know what I really, really want, I don't want to be stuck. Ukyo tried to hug Akane, but Akane held her away. After a moment, Ukyo stopped. Akane apologized and left. The early morning light illuminated Ukyo's downstairs restaurant, showing her how empty everything was. Man, I didn't realize that this chapter was so in line with my mood right now. Um, Man, okay. I don't see anybody in yet, so we're gonna go. What happened here? We're gonna go back to reading here. It was a week later, at Ranma's birthday party, that Ryoga got to see Ranma again. The afternoon sun hung chill in the air, as winds whirled and cooled the city in their wake. And that's the last thing I wrote. We were at outer motivation, things coming at us to stop us from doing what we're doing. This is Ryoga shows up at Ranma's birthday party and tries to give him flowers. Ranma tells him, ouch. Ranma tells him to cut it out since they're both guys. Ukyo tries to convince Shampoo to at least still sleep together. Shampoo agrees as long as no one finds out. Then we have a major setback where we fail pretty hard at doing what we're doing. So during the party, Ranma sees his mother flirting with Kasumi, and Ukyo sneaks Shampoo out around Clone's back. They go and make out. Ukyo talks about marrying Shampoo, since Ukyo is registered as male. And now we get to the climax, which is learning what the major setback. We struggle and resolve the problem. Ranma confronts his mom about Kasumi, and Genma overhears. Shampoo breaks up with Ukyo, saying that though they could sleep together, Shampoo needs to bring a male home so that she can have new children for the tribe. And then we have the aftermath, what happened after we solved the problem, which is what the climax was. And that's Ryoga talks to Ranma about how his father cheated on his mother as well. And Ranma kisses Ryoga when both are male. And Kasumi moves in with Nodoka, and Genma and Ranma go to live with the Tendos. Genma tells Ranma that he accepts him, and that all the push to be a man came from his mother. He says that Ranma can choose his own life. Ukyo sits alone in her shop crying. Nakane officially breaks the engagement, saying she hasn't felt free yet, especially now that she has tasted what freedom could mean. She says maybe later, but she won't stop Ranma from being himself. And that was the end of that chapter. I'm not going to finish this story. I'm just not in the same headspace I was when I was writing it. But this was how close I was to finishing this chapter. And you kind of seen a bit of how I write. I outline my chapters kind of like in this way. And as I write, I have the next thing at the bottom so that I always see it as I'm typing. And then when I'm done, I go through and I delete it and I move on to the next scene. So I always know roughly what the beginning and end of every chapter is going to be before I really start writing it. I have some other stories. Let me get a drink real quick. And I'm also archiving all this on my YouTube channel. So anybody who misses anything live, please go check out the YouTube archives. And of course the Twitch archives as long as they're up here. Alright. Let's see here. It's the... Oh, that changed it. There we go. Ah. There we go. That's neutral. Alright. So let's choose another story that I wrote or started writing. I have a lot of incomplete, unpublished. Like this one here is Scooby Moon, Curse of the Ghastly Mansion. Darkness was all around Olivia as she drove the rental truck along the mountain road. The headlights illuminated the path as she reflected on her move to the lonely hotel in the mountain. The chill December air was kept at bay as the truck's heater kept the inside warm. Outside, the evidence of the coldness, the chill fog, left the darkness beyond the lit-up path even more foreboding than before. It had been weeks since her boyfriend broke up with her, and Olivia needed a place to live. The hotel was hiring, and after a phone interview, they invited her to become a live-in employee. There was no choice about it, considering where the job was located. The mountain road led up and up to where the hotel was located. It sat alone in the mountains, with a resort village 10 miles at its base, and a ski lodge 7 miles further up the mountain way. There were no homes available in the village, as no villager would give room. Still, it was a place to live and a job to support her. That's all Olivia could hope for right now. Not that she could count on her friends anymore. After 3 weeks, she had bounced from friend to friend, sleeping for a few nights at each place, and now they all hated her. She could barely sleep as it was, as she attempted to live on their couches and dens. Without fail, they would awake too soon, and she would go about the day tired and drained. Sleep would come late at night, after her mind finished racing about what she would do with her life, but had nowhere to really go to, no family within the district she was in. Darkness and emptiness was all Olivia could see. The road seemed to echo into her vision. She slowed down, shaking the weariness from her head. She was exhausted. Then the lights of the truck caught something glimmering in the edge of the darkness. Olivia's breath caught in her throat as a ghastly, translucent figure came out of the fog. Her mind screamed as the ghostly figure vanished. How tired was she? Was she seeing things? And this is Scooby Moon, The Curse of the Ghastly Mansion. The darkness can carry with it a potent anger. The lights of the city faded behind as the train rocked through the late December night. Usagi stared out into the darkness, her gaze upon the stars of the clear sky. The nearly full moon shone brightly. Oh man, sorry about that, guys. Still have way too many too many alerts connected to my computer. She sighed, her mind coming back to the present, away from the memories of a life long ago lost on the moon. It had been a difficult year for Usagi. She wanted nothing more than to be done with all her problems, which is why this current adventure she was on with her friends was so important. They were all on the train's cabin with her. Amy, her closest friend and one of the first sentry she had recruited. She was easily the brightest of the five. She wore glasses and tended to dress in cute sweater vests. Amy was a genius in almost everything she put her mind to. She did seem to focus quite a bit on biology, and there was every indication that she was going to follow her mother's path in becoming a doctor. Minako was in personality and appearance the closest to Usagi. Minako was blonde and blue-eyed, and she was beautiful. Though where Usagi felt meek, Minako was outgoing. Oof. And that completely reset my location here. Okay. Usagi wanted to match that with Minako to be more outgoing like her friend. Rei, a Shinto priestess, was the raven-haired beauty of the team. She exuded a calm poise that left Usagi jealous. Rei had a cool that could leave people speechless. Not only that, her position as priestess left her in a position of respect among the group. Then there was Makoto. Makoto was easily a head taller than any of the girls. She was athletic, powerful, and amazing. Usagi would be happy to have 1% of Makoto's athleticism. As it was, she never felt clumsier than when she was next to Makoto's grace and agility. The five girls shared the cabin in the train. The conversation ranged from nothing to everything, as they all seemed to vibrate with an eagerness of the upcoming vacation. Once more, Amy went over the plan for the night. Arrival would be about 2 hours before the trolley would leave for up to the mountain. They would spend it in a 24-hour family-style restaurant in the resort town near the mountain base. Usagi sighed, staring back out into the night, her mind going back to the memories of her former life on the moon. She gazed back to the nearly full moon. It was so clear in the sky. Just south of the Sea of Serenity was where her palace would have been. The palace where she had lost everything when Queen Metalia, the demon ruler of the Negaverse, had decided to attack the moon. Usagi's mother, no, Princess Serenity's mother, had locked Metalia away using the silver crystal. She had also sent Usagi's soul and that of the other Senshi forward in time. Usagi sometimes wondered if her former mother had known what she had sent her daughter to do. If she knew what she would have to go through to survive the coming of Neo Crystal Tokyo. The darkness was clear, and it stared back at the girls unflinchingly. Fate was a cruel mistress indeed, as the train continued to propel the girls to their destiny. Only time would tell if they could survive the coming evil. The diner was exactly where Amy's phone map had guided them to, and with great eagerness to escape the winter chill, the girls piled into the restaurant. They each had a small travel bag with them, and their noses were red with the chill of the night. So, and then my plan, very undeveloped in the story, is they get involved. Amy goes in last. She gets a local newspaper. They stop at a diner before going to the mountain retreat, and they hear an urban legend of the monster. And the rest was going to be like Scooby-Doo. So, let me show you some notes. That I had done. So Usagi is Scooby-Doo. Eating, not brave unless bribed. Amy is Velma with losing her glasses. Ray is Daphne, danger prone Daphne. Makoto is going to be Fred, always saying split up. And Minako is going to be Shaggy. So, Scooby and Shaggy, short skit to confuse the monster transformation pen. The convoluted plan made by Makoto has to fail. Scooby jumping into Shaggy's arms and explaining away the mystery. So these are the different tropes from Scooby-Doo and Sailor Moon kind of merged together there. And we have our prologue, which is villain dressed in a costume does something evil. The original title was The Accidental Investigators. Have kind of ideas here. Ray keeps wanting Makoto. Makoto is more interested in the monster. Minako and Amy are dating. They share a drink. Usagi and Minako are best friends. Usagi wants to share a drink too. Usagi talks about Mamo-chan. First meeting, the monster shows up. Usagi jumps into Minako's arms. They go to stay at the hotel. They hear the people have been disappearing there. An investigator is staying at the hotel as well, looking for someone who killed his wife. The monster shows up in the middle of the night to attack the girls. Makoto makes a plan to take down the monster. They split up. Minako and Usagi run into the monster, but they disguise themselves to get away. Ray gets kidnapped. They go looking for Ray, and she says what happened. Amy says, I don't think that it's a monster. The monster attacks the investigator, injuring him, and he has to go to the hospital. Makoto makes a plan to capture the monster. Amy loses her glasses. Plan gets messed up. The monster chases the girls down, but Usagi and Minako manage to get it stuck in the trap. They unmask the monster, only to find out that he was the wife killer. I guess he was a monster all along, says Amy. And that's that story. Another unfinished thing. Also had Ranma's Rules of Engagement, which was going to be a Ranma 1/2 Rules of Engagement crossover, and I was gonna have to like watch a bunch of that show to like get into it. There was a lot of things that kind of like overlaid and I thought would work, and I just never really got through it. Never watched enough of the show, just some episodes. So There was that. I have other published stories. I have How Ryoga Met Your Mother, um, which is also published. Um, and Bisoujo Sentai Ranma, which is Bisoujo Sentai Ranma Nibo no Ichi 100% Ichigo Lemonade. Probably a little too much. This is even worse than anything I've read so far. Even more so than Ranma's Big Mouth. So that's not gonna happen there. Um, but let's see. We got any new viewers? No. It's okay. It's not exactly prime time. Maybe everybody else is watching some of the other things, but hey, that's okay. We're here to try and have fun. Sink this in. Let me check how this looks. Okay. How Ryoga Met Your Mother, Chapter 1. Bright sunlight filters through the horizontal blinds of Ryoga's office. It is Sunday, and like usual, he is alone at work. His office is simple, with an oak desk and a drawing mat on one part of the L-shaped desk. He powers down the desktop computer and gets up to stretch, relieving muscles that ache from being inert for too long. He passes his hand through his dark graying hair, then grabs his jacket hanging off the back of his office chair. Ryoga goes to leave, but is struck by tepid waves of nostalgia as he passes by a photo hanging next to the door. His breath catches in his throat. The old photo came from one of thousands he stores in the electronic picture frame, along with some videos which he leaves on silent. He quickly reaches over to the frame and pauses the slideshow. The photo is from 2009, when Ryoga was 31 years old. It was taken outside his apartment in New York, just weeks before he moved back to Japan. Marshall is there, tall, charismatic, wild. Next to Marshall, his wife Lily, short, with long, fiery red hair and a crazy smile. And to the right of Lily is a young Ryoga, his wild hair shining in the sun. Next to him is Akane with a confident smile, her short hair framing her angelic face. And standing next to Akane, holding her hand, is Ranma, with his pigtailed hair and stupid smile, wearing his favorite suit with a red tie. A few years before the photo was taken, when his parents decided to visit him in New York, Ryoga found out that they were divorced. Ryoga remembers asking his mother how she had met his father. She smiled at him and simply stated they met in a bar. No cute story, no lessons to learn, no sense of time or accomplishment, no connection, nothing. Ryoga made a promise that day. He promised that he would talk to his kids. They would not be lost out in the world because of some stupid curse. Ryoga promised that when they were ready, he would tell them how their parents met, how they came together, and he would tell them everything that led up to it, so that they would know and not make the same mistakes. Sighing at the photo, Ryoga puts down his brown soft leather jacket and leaves the office. He walks home down the streets of Fujinomiya. Still mostly untouched by the advances made throughout the years, Fujinomiya still feels very Japanese. In the distance, Mount Fuji continues to stand, a testament to the solidity of Japan. It isn't quite tourist season, but in Fujinomiya, you really couldn't tell the difference. Even though Japan no longer houses any American bases, plenty of the Marines still visit Mount Fuji to climb and hike. Others came by to see the different landmarks and beautiful vistas still preserved and maintained throughout the district. After an hour more of following electrical currents, Ryoga finds his way home. 3 stories tall and of his own design, it stands on the foundation of his old family home. Soft yellow panels with stone decor and columns. The outside wall is a short granite wall. Out back is a pig pen where the family keeps their boars. Ryoga gathers his kids into the living room. The sun has just set, and they both groan as they sit down. Both kids are in their mid-teens, about a year apart, with dark hair and fang-like canines, much like their father. I have a story to tell you guys, Ryoga begins, about how I met your mother. Dad, we've already heard the story, his son, Hogoshako, interrupts him. Mom told us about the umbrella already. Hogoshako leans away from his older sister, hanging part way over the couch's armrest, looking outside past the patio to the few boars they keep outside. A sudden shower, typical of the season, quickly made it difficult to see outside. Well, but you haven't heard the whole story yet. Ryo grins like a cat who just caught a canary. He walks over and closes the sliding patio door, not wanting to deal with any sudden winds blowing cold water on him and triggering his other curse. We have to listen to this, his daughter. Kiboka glares with a stare of 1,000 angry teenage girls. Her dark black lips puckered in a pout she usually reserves for getting out of chores, or when avoiding questions of why she was out past 2 in the morning on a school night. Yes, Ryoga continues, after they groan again. It all started back in 2005. I was 27 years old. Ryoga sits down across from them. The coffee table between them is littered with small statues from all corners of the world. One of the statues blocks his view of his daughter, so he adjusts himself to lean to one side. Sorry, gotta to lean to one side. Where did I go? Da-da-da. He says, I was just starting out as a martial arts architect and living with my best friend from college, Marshall. Everything was fine until Uncle Marshall had to mess everything up. Let's go. Marshall Erickson's hair was neatly parted down the middle of his large, sweating head. His eyes were unfocused as he pictured his girlfriend of 9 years standing over him. He was kneeling down, looking up at his best friend since college, Ryoga Hibiki. In Marshall's hand was a small velvety case, open to reveal a diamond ring. Ryoga was smiling at Marshall, nodding his head. Ryoga said, yes, yes, perfect. Marshall's heart constricted. Relief washed over him like cascading waves, and the sweat factory out in his pores closed down for lunch. Shaking the fears that continued to nest in his stomach, he stood up. Hopefully it would go this smoothly with Lily later tonight. Marshall walked over to where he kept his jacket hung, and closed the case with the ring in it. He put it away and turned to Ryoga. I'm really nervous, you know. Thanks for helping me plan this out. Marshall followed Ryoga into the kitchen and accepted a beer from his friend. Ryoga looked up to Marshall. The difference between the two the same as when Marshall was kneeling, only now Marshall towered over Ryoga instead. Ryoga took a sip from his beer. It's okay. I was there for all the big events in yours and Lily's lives, you know? The night you guys first met, your first date, other first things. Marshall had the decency to blush, remembering the night that he had brought Lily over to their dorm room. They were all over each other like horny drunk soccer moms when Ryoga started complaining about nausea and being seasick. Marshall also remembered that after Ryoga left the room to give them some privacy, he ended up being lost for a week. Marshall apologized. Yeah, sorry about that. We thought you were asleep. Marshall laughed as Ryoga blushed a deep crimson. It's physics, Marshall. If the bottom bunk moves, the top bunk moves too. Ryoga tried to laugh at himself, but it came out only half-hearted. Excitedly, Ryoga changed the subject. Kami, you're getting engaged tonight. Marshall's heart pounded like a fist of a Shaolin monk defeating a gang of ghoulish Girl Scouts. Marshall imagined Lily saying yes to him, her crimson hair hanging around him as she bent down to kiss him. If this went as perfectly as he imagined, he'd be eternally grateful to Ryoga. Yeah, Marshall shook himself out of his reverie. What are you doing tonight? Ryoga scoots his chair a bit to be able to sit back and still see both his children. They looked so bored. and for a moment his daughter seemed to be meditating with her eyes open. Ignoring her unfocused stare, Ryoga continued. Your Uncle Marshall was taking the biggest step in his life, and what was I doing? I was meeting up with your Uncle Ranma at the bar. Sorry, needed a drink. All that reading. Ranma sat at the bar of the Nikohanten, a bar downstairs from Ryoga's apartment. He checked his watch again, his face in an annoyed pout. He looked at the mirror behind the bar, using it not only to make sure his black pigtailed hair was still perfect, but to keep an eye on the group of women that sat in the corner of the bar. The door of Nikohanten opened, and bringing outside light with it. A shadow of a young man entered, and as the door closed, Ranma finally gave a shout of recognition. Finally, I've been waiting for 2 hours, Ryoga. Ranma waved his friend over, ignoring his excuses. Sorry I'm late. I got stuck in the elevator. The door never opened to the lobby. Eventually, I got off on the second floor and walked upstairs to the first. Ryoga joined Ranma at the bar and ordered himself a beer. You know how I have a thing for Japanese girls, Ranma said to Ryoga, and without waiting for a nod in response, he continued with a toothy grin. I have a new one. Chinese girls. Ranma took a sip of his drink and spoke matter of fact. Chinese girls are the new Japanese. Ryoga sighed, taking another sip from his beer. He hunched his shoulders and stared into nothing. He spoke as if from the back of his mind. You know, ever since college, it's been Marshall and Lily and me. Now it's going to be Marshall and Lily and me. They'll get married, start a family. Before long, I'm the lost middle-aged bachelor their kids call Uncle Ryoga. Ranma's skin prickled as he felt waves of depression emanating from Ryoga. Ranma looked at a beautiful Asian woman who had just walked in and sat down by herself. She was wearing a pale blue dress with a loose top, designed to appear to be about to fall off, when in fact it covered everything essential. It was tight around her tight hips, and she had a bit of martial arts training by the gait of her step, and a subtle, tantalizing swish of her hips. With one eye on the target, he turned back to Ryoga. I know what this is about. Don't you remember what I said the first night we met? Ranma could see Ryoga's eyes glaze over like they always did when he was remembering something. He laughed to himself as he saw the emotions of the night play across Ryoga's face. Finally, Ryoga came out of his memory trance, blinking like a blinded buffoon. Don't even think about getting married until I'm 30? Ryoga recited as if reading in front of a classroom. Ranma's eyes crossed with annoyance. He blinked and sighed and moaned. Ugh. He should not have been surprised that Ryoga wouldn't remember everything. Ranma said, I meant the one about wearing a suit, although now that I think about it, the rule can count towards this as well. Ranma took another drink from his beer, admiring the hint of lilac that reflected in the Asian woman's hair. Ryoga sighed again. You're right, I guess it's just when your best friend gets engaged, you start thinking about that stuff. Dark phantoms haunted Ranma's eyes. They gleamed and glimmered with tears. His mouth, open and closed, suddenly dry and aching. He looked at Ryoga's face, trying to find what foul mouth spoke such heinous words. Ryoga, I'm your best friend. I thought I was your best friend. Say I'm your best friend. Ryoga looked at Ranma through half-lidded eyes. He spoke in a deadpan tone. Ranma, you're my best friend. Instantly energized, Ranma gave Ryoga a sinister smile. Good. And since, a little more emphasis, I am your best friend, I say we do a round of anything goes blind dating. Fear, dread, hope, annoyance, and disbelief played across Ryoga's face at the same time, becoming entangled in one another, leaving his face frozen with a horrendous look, disgusting to most, and funny to few. Wait, no, no, no! Ryoga tried to stop Ranma, but was easily evaded by Ranma's superior agility. In a forced whisper, Ryoga said, We're not doing anything goes blind dating. Ryoga sighed, seeing he was too late. Ranma tapped the Asian woman on her shoulder. As she turned around, he smiled his patented Sao Tome Trust Me smile. With a flourish, he said, "Have you met Ryoga?" Ranma quickly moved out of the way as a perplexed girl stared at Ryoga. "Hi, Ryoga stammered. I'm Ryoga." The woman smiled at him. "My name is Lin Lin." She invited him to join her at her table, which he did. "That's a very pretty name," Ryoga smiled. "Thanks, it's Chinese," Lin Lin returned the smile. Ryoga sighed as he joined Ranma back at the bar. He found himself sighing too often today already, and was 3 sighs away from packing it in and going home. He apologized to Moose, the bartender, for having flirted with his girlfriend. Moose took it well enough, saying he was used to guys hitting on her. Ryoga started wondering if he'd ever get used to it. First, he'd need a serious girlfriend, then she'd need to be hot enough to get hit on. He wondered if he'd love her at that point, or if it would be something that was growing. He thought he would be jealous if they were engaged or married. Why am I freaking out all of a sudden? Not even ready to settle down. Ryoga took a sip of his beer. Ranma ignored Ryoga while studying Moose. How does Moose get a Chinese girl? Shallow breaths came faster and faster as Ryoga lost himself over his beer. Ryoga's thoughts were a jumbled mess. He tried to sort it out, but found he needed to get them out of his head first. It's always been, don't even think about it till you're 30. Exactly, Ranma sneered. And his glasses are too thick. A twisting knot started in Ryoga's gut. Maybe even lower. His future was withering away in vermilion sand. Marshall and Lily have been together for 9 years, and only now is Ryoga thinking about marriage. He thought he'd have a steady girlfriend by now. But his life has been nothing but woeful wandering. Shadows crept into the edges of his vision. His heart thundered and raged inside his chest. Ryoga looked up to the ceiling of the bar. He looked up past the buildings into the heavens. He looked up to the eyes of the kami. I'm ready. Where is she? Ryoga sighed, one of his last 3 sighs. His heart contracted at the end of it, hurting him. He gasped. Staring at his dark reflection in the mirror behind the bar, something caught his eye. Turning around, he saw her. It was like an old movie. Time slowed down as he noticed every detail about her. Her hair was dark and long with a sheen of dark blue. Her eyes a milky chocolate brown. Her smile was honest. She was well dressed, business casual, as if she had come from work. Her clutch was yellow with little small black pigs on them. She was drinking sake while her friends drank red wine or vodka. Ryoga caught Ranma's attention. Hey, see that girl? Ranma followed Ryoga's gaze and immediately assessed. Nice tits. Ryoga's heavy heart made it difficult for him to stand. He needed to approach this woman. Everything in his body was telling him to, but he knew. If she said no, his fragile heart made of glass would shatter into 1,000 pieces. Ryoga stood up, trying to think of a way to approach her. She was approaching the bar. She was coming nearer. Suddenly, he heard Ranma speak. Have you met Ryoga? Kiboka sighed as she silently replied to her friend's text message. She had to wait until her father was done with his story. At least he seemed to be getting to the point. She looked over at Hogoshako, wondering how her little brother was doing. He was leering again. Sometimes she worried her brother would never grow out of being a pervert. She focused on what her dad was saying, wondering how he managed to suck the life out of a 10-minute story. Ryoga took a sip of tea. She was a reporter for Metro News 1. Well, kind of a reporter. She did fluff pieces at the end of the news. We met at 5 the next day, and I took her to a nice sushi restaurant. We talked, really got to know each other, and at the time, she felt like the perfect woman for me. We were walking after dinner when a Metro News 1 van pulled up and told her she had to cover a story about a guy about to jump out of a building. I got home about 10:30. Hokushaku looked disappointed. So, did you kiss her? Ryoga smiled. Funny you should ask that. Ryoga got back to the apartment 4 hours after the date and was greeted by Lily and Marshall. Ryoga stood stunned for a moment, returning the greeting. So, Lily, have you plundered Marshall's booty yet? Lily glared at him with her good eye, the strain causing the one behind the eye patch to burn a little, which she ignored for more glaring. After a few seconds, she gave up when she realized that she couldn't faze him with just one eye. So, how was the date? Ryoga told them about how she used to play Romeo in the school play because everyone thought she'd do better than the boys. He told them about how she worked for Metro News 1 and how she was hoping to become an anchor. He told them how the date ended. Marshall leaned forward excited. So did you kiss her? Ryoga's chest tightened. He pictured the future. He shook his head. No, the moment wasn't right. She could be my future wife. I want the first kiss to be special. Lily sighed. Aw, that's sweet, Ryoga. So you chickened out like a little bitch. Lily's voice oozed sweetness. Ryoga hated himself. He hated that Lily always called him out when he was too shy or too scared. I did not chicken out. Look, I'm not taking advice from a pirate who hasn't been single since college. Ryoga sighed, shame creeping up the recesses of his mind for being so defensive about his weaknesses. Lily gave Ryoga her best "you idiot" stare. Ryoga, anyone who's single would tell you the same thing. Even the dumbest single person alive. And if you don't believe me, call him. Ryoga thought about what Lily said, but refused to accept it. So he did what Lily suggested and called Ranma. When Ranma picked up on the other end, Ryoga was a bit stunned as moans and grunts came through the phone. Ranma, are you there? Ryoga asked, almost sheepishly. From the phone, Ranma's voice came, from between grunts and groans. Hey, Ryoga, you called while I was having an appointment with Destiny. I should give you her number. She always gives me a happy ending, despite putting me through hell first. Ryoga felt more than heard Ranma getting kicked and stomped on. Finally, some girl cursed him out in Chinese, and Ranma got back on the phone. So, what's up? Ryoga hesitated for a moment. I have something to talk to you about. Can you meet me at the Neko Hanten? Alright, let's take a little break. I need a little bit of drinking break. Alright. Let's see here. I hope everybody has fun watching this in the archives. Looking forward to it. Let's see here. Ryoga dismissively waved his hand towards Marshall and then Lily as he spoke to Ranma. So these guys think I chickened out. What do you think? Ryoga took a bite from the grilled steak nachos they ordered. I mean, she didn't even give me the signal. Ranma looked at Marshall, who sat next to him, then to Lily. Both nodded to his silent question. Ranma then turned his gaze to Ryoga. An eldritch wonder etched into his woeful eyes. What is she gonna do? Bat her eyes at you in Morse code? Ranma started batting his eyes. Ryoga, kiss me. He stops and shakes his head. For emphasis, no, you just kiss her. The front of Ryoga's head hurt, like a bruise, and he crossed his arms in a huff. Not if I don't get the signal. Ryoga gasped, his mind shutting down as Ranma leaned over to Marshall, gently caressed Marshall's face, and kissed the taller man on his lips. By the time Ranma pulled away, a small trail of saliva snapped from his tongue to the inside of Marshall's mouth. Marshall didn't move. His face was a mask of horror unlike any Ryoga had ever witnessed. Ranma looked smug as he looked back to Ryoga. Did Marshall give me the signal? No! Marshall yelled, coming out of his shock. He looked to Lily, his eyes pleading with her. I didn't, I swear! Ranma ignored Marshall's gibbering, drooling apologies to his fiancée, much like one ignores an annoying sibling or perverted ex-boyfriend. But see, at least tonight I can sleep knowing that Marshall and me? Never gonna happen. You should have kissed her. Ryoga's face scrunched up in an awkward grimace. He groaned and let his head drop with a thud on the table. Muted by the table, he acquiesced his friend's conclusion. I should have kissed her. After things quieted down between Marshall and Lily, Ryoga sat back up. She's going away for a week. Do I wait until she gets back from her news report in Orlando? Ranma sneered at the suggestion. A week? It's like a year in hot girl time. She'll forget all about you. I'm telling you, you'll never see her again. Ranma drank some beer from his nachos. He stopped mid-swig when he noticed Ryoga pointing to the television behind him, muttering under his breath. Lily looked interested. Ooh, she's cute. Hey, Moose, turn it up. Marshall turned to look with everyone else. From the TV, the reporter said, persuaded him to reconsider, at which point the man came down from the ledge, giving this bizarre story a happy ending. Huh, the guy didn't jump, Marshall commented. Like a stop-motion lightning bolt, the words struck Ryoga, jolting him into action. Ryoga stood up. I'm going to kiss her, right now. Dude, it's midnight, Marshall stated bluntly. As your future lawyer, I'm going to advise you. That's freaking crazy. Marshall tried to pulling Ryoga back down, but Ryoga refused to budge. Ryoga looked at his best friend, his eyes resolute. It's just it. I never just do anything. I always plot, or get lost, or turn around. By the time I get the guts to do anything, I've missed my opportunity. Well, she's leaving tomorrow. This may be my only chance. Ryoga pointed to the television again. I gotta do what that guy couldn't do. I have to take the leap. Ryoga started heading to the bathroom, but turned. Okay, not the best metaphor. For me, it's falling in love. For him, it's death. Ranma smirked. No, that's the perfect metaphor. A melancholy look crossed Ranma's face, as if he forgot something. He raised his spear towards Lily and Marshall, and quickly smiled again. I never did congratulate you two. Lily shook her head in disgust. I'm doing this, Ryoga resolved, heading towards the back entrance of the bar. Marshall quickly stopped him. Lily got up and nodded to them both. We're coming, Lily said as she pulled Marshall with her. She paused when he resisted and looked at Ranma, still sitting and drinking. She glared at him with her good eye. Ranma felt a tense pressure of atmosphere shift. His body shivered as his skin saw what caused his danger sense to go on full alert, even before he did. He looked up at Lily's glare and asked, What? Ranma watched from the cab along with Marshall and Lily as Ryoga walked out of the cab and went up the few steps leading to the 4-story building in Brooklyn. Ryoga rang the doorbell. Ryoga then shouted up to the window, and a moment later was buzzed in. Satisfied that he was going to succeed, Ranma turned to Lily and asked a question that had been haunting him all night. So, how come you're wearing an eye patch? Finally decided between pirates versus ninjas? Ranma tried not to let his eyes linger too long on the flaming red hair, or the way her clothes wrapped itself around her curves. Wouldn't do to perv on a friend's girl, no matter what his mother's view on manliness. Marshall tried to suppress his laugh, while Lily answered, That's enough. She removed the eye patch. After Marshall proposed to me, he popped open the champagne, and the cork hit me in the eye. Marshall avoided Ranma's gaze, ignored Lily's jab with her elbow to his ribs, and asked, So, do we wait for him, or... Ranma looked up, checked his watch, then shrugged. Nah, he'll probably be here all night. Let's just go back to the bar. Ryoga smiled at the most beautiful woman he'd ever seen. He stepped into her modest apartment, overflowing with little knickknacks. She smiled back, happy he came by to visit. So, Ryoga, what brings you back to Brooklyn at 1 a.m? Face flushed, Ryoga laughed a bit, a self-conscious chuckle, then said, I got lost. She walked up to him, her pace slow and agonizing his senses. Happens to you a lot, then. She was in front of him now, gazing up into his shining brown eyes. Would you like some sake while you're here? Her gaze was feral, and he almost backed up, but steeled himself. Are you trying to get me drunk? He swallowed this nervousness trapped in his throat. She leaned forward, her lips against his right ear. For starters, she purred, then quickly and nonchalantly walked towards the kitchen, pausing briefly to turn on her stereo. Soft jazz music filtered through the air, and Ryoga looked up to the kami and simply mouthed a thank you to the heavens. When she came back with the drinks, they each took a gulp, then began to dance close together. The music washed over them. She gazed at him, and as he shared a deep, passionate stare with her, she said, "I think I like your eyes." Heart fluttering, Ryoga said, "I think I like your long hair." Her gaze deepened into him. "I think I like your fangs." His gaze deepened into her. "I think I love you." What? All three of Ryoga's friends shouted at him as he told the story later at the bar, the force of the shout bullying Ryoga out of the booth. What? Ryoga's two kids looked at him like he was crazy. She just kept staring at Ryoga. He was starting to get nervous. She finally asked, What do you mean you love me?" Ryoga's heart was crushed into a pulp. His shoulders slumped. "By Kami, I can't believe I said that. Why did I say that? Who says that?" Ryoga was nearing hysteria before he caught himself and turned to leave. "I should just go." She grabs his arm. "Wait, you'll get lost." Doves and hearts rejoiced in his vision as his knees melted, nearly dropping him to the floor. "You remembered that." He clasped her hands to his heart, gazing into her eyes. "Thanks, I love you." Too late, he realized he said it again. "What is wrong with me?" Hold on. Okay. "What is wrong with me?" She just laughed and walked him downstairs to the front door. He stepped outside. A cold wind blended into his own despair. He turned back to her after stepping down the short 5 steps that led to the building, from her building to the sidewalk. "When you tell this story to your friends, could you avoid the word psycho? I prefer eccentric." She smiled at him. "Good night, psycho." Ryoga feigned rejection, then noticed his friends were gone. "Great. Can you point me to the F train?" She laughed and pointed to her right. Ryoga dreaded getting lost again. He thanked her, reined in his emotions, making his voice gruff and choked. He started walking to his right, but turned around. He just couldn't let things finish this way. "Wait!" His voice stopped her from entering back into the building. "You know, I'm done being single. I'm not good at it. I know you're not supposed to tell someone you just met that you love them, but it sucks that you can't. If a woman were to bear with me through my getting lost and everything else, I know I'd be a good husband. Because I'm good at stuff like making her laugh and being a good father." Every word had brought him closer to her. She was leaning close to him again, enraptured by him. Ryoga almost whispered, "And being a good kisser." Her face grew a mischievous smirk. "Everyone thinks they are a good kisser." Ryoga leaned closer to her. "Oh, I know I'm a good kisser. I've got references and everything." She smiled at him, lingering slightly, then she straightened up and put her hand out for him to shake. "Good night, Ryoga." He took her small, strong, supple hand into his and shook it, careful not to apply too much pressure. "And I'm a good handshaker." She leaned in close to him, their eyes mere moments apart. "That's a really good handshake." Her voice came out husky and oozing. Marshall sat next to Lily at Nico Hanten, keeping as much distance between himself and Ranma as possible. Ryoga had come in about an hour after they had arrived, looking like a melted ice cube, and started to tell them about how the visit had gone. And that was it. Ryoga finished telling his friends the story at the Nico Hanten just before 2 in the morning. They sat in silence, staring at him. "What?" He nearly shrilled. "What?" Marshall could no longer contain his voice. "That was the signal," Lily tried to clarify, speaking with restrained emotions. like an atheist explaining evolution to creationists. That long, lingering handshake? You should have kissed her! Ranma shook his head. There's no such thing as the signal, but yeah, that was it. Moose came up and handed Marshall a bottle, before turning to Ryoga. By the way, you should have kissed her. Ryoga stared at the bartender in confusion. You weren't there! Marshall grinned at Lily and popped the cork of the champagne, confidently and without incident. Lily drooled a bit and wiped her mouth with the back of her hand. She grabbed Marshall's bicep with both hands and squeezed it. I'm so turned on right now. They shared a kiss briefly and fiercely before Marshall began pouring drinks for everyone, including one glass for Moose, who had just brought some for the group. Ryoga lifted his head from the table. Trust me, guys, that wasn't the signal. I've seen the signal. Ranma shushed Ryoga. We're not on you anymore. Then he lifted his glass to the betrothed couple across from him. Marshall toasted first. To my fiancée. Lily was next. To my future. Ranma smiled broadly. To one hell of a night. Ryoga, frustrated and weak, continued in his own little world. That was not the signal. Ryoga's two teenage kids are simply dumbfounded. He continues to ignore their mute stares. I asked her about it, years later, and yeah, that was the signal. I could have kissed her. That's destiny for you. It happens whether you plan it or not. I mean, I never thought I'd see her again, but as it turns out, I was just too close to the puzzle to see it. And that's the story of how I met your Aunt Akane. Ryoga takes a sip of tea. Hogashako recovers quickly. Aunt Akane? His voice holding a puzzled strain. I thought this was supposed to be about how you met Mom. Kiboka looks at her father with deadly daggers. Are you trying to punish us? Ryoga smiles. No. Will you relax? I'm getting to it. It's a long story. Yeah, there's chapter 1 of that story. Let's see. Let's check on the chat. I'm not getting any chat or anything. I guess maybe this time isn't gonna be getting a lot of people. I was really excited when the first week I had so many people. But I kind of want to maintain consistency, and having something to say while hanging out is essentially reading these chapters. But so let's give it another hour and see what happens with this one here. Chapter 2. Ryoga Hibiki, aged 27, walked down the street and looked absolutely lost. Sighing, he walked into a convenience store, hoping to get better directions this time. Inside, there were some police officers and firemen working on getting a little boy who was trapped inside a crane machine. Looking around for a clerk or someone who can give him directions, he spotted Akane. She finished talking to a cameraman, and then Ryoga approached her. Hi, Akane. What are the odds? What are you doing in LA? Akane laughed at him. We're in New York, silly. So what about you? Ryoga laughed nervously. Well, I'm a little turned around, you know. So you're reporting on some news or something? Akane smiled at Ryoga. How sweet of you to call it news. But it's a kid stuck in a crane machine. Ryoga looked back at the kid. His rescuers were having no luck getting him out. Maybe I can help? Ryoga walked up to the officers. They let him give it a shot. With one powerful chop, Ryoga caused the crane machine to split in half. The boy trapped inside tumbled out with all the stuffed animals. Akane ran over to his side. Wow, I didn't know you were a martial artist. Ryoga grinned nervously. Yeah, I'm self-taught. Look, Akane, call me crazy, but I feel like there's something between us, you know? Ryoga, you're not crazy. I mean, we barely know each other, and you're looking at me with that look. Ryoga interrupted her. What look? A look like, let's fall in love and have kids and take them to martial arts tournaments. Akane fidgeted a bit. Ryoga shook his head. I'm not going to force martial arts on them unless they're interested. Ryoga, it's a good look. It's just, you're looking at the wrong girl. I don't want to get married right now. Maybe ever. And if we got together, I'd feel like I'd either have to marry you or break your heart. And I can't do either of those things. Just like how you can't stop how you feel about me. Connie looked at Ryoga, her eyes moist and apologetic. Ryoga leaned over close to Connie. I can turn it off. We can just date. I'll show you. Then he kissed her deeply and passionately. They stood there in each other's arms as a small boy, who had been trapped in the crane, was carried away by his mother, and the police started bagging all the stuffed animals, mostly due to the fact that the kids have small bladders. Ryoga then pulled away from Akane. I can't turn it off. Me too. Akane looked at Ryoga and they both laughed. I guess we could just be friends? I know that it sounds bad when people say that to each other, but I just moved here in April and I don't know anybody. I could use a good friend. Maybe in a few months, after it's not so fresh, we can all get a beer? Ryoga sighed. Yeah, that sounds good. Kane squeezed Ryoga's arm and started walking away. I'll see ya. Ryoga stopped her. Or we could all, get a beer now. I'd like that. Akane smiled at Ryoga. Ryoga sits back down after getting more tea. The moon was big this night, and he lost himself a little in its bright gaze. He turned back to his two teenage kids. His son was a bit short for his age and really into computers. Only mildly interested in martial arts, he never took up the family style. Ryoga's daughter was the epitome of teenage rebellion, had several boyfriends, and just this last year decided that she was into the occult. Ryoga smiled, thinking that her teacher Gosenguki probably had something to do with that. Back to the topic on hand, Ryoga started his tale again. Kids, when you're single and you're looking for your happiness, you have to realize something. Only one of your stories will lead you to a happy ever after. The rest end up with someone getting hurt. But even those stories become a part of who you are when you meet the perfect person for you. This next story is one of those stories, and it all starts with a bandana. Ryoga enters the Nekohanten. He has a black and yellow bandana on. He struts up to the table, where Ranma, Akane, Lily, and Marshall are sitting. Akane immediately notices. Nice bandana. Right, Ryoga smiles happily. Lily looks at Ryoga, her long, straight red hair catching the light. Wow, look at those colors, yellow and black, together at last. Hot Dana, bro, is it new? Marshall asked unsarcastically. Ryoga grabs a chair and sits down at the table they are at. That's the strange part. I've had it for over 10 years ago, and until this morning I didn't really like it. But after being lost in my closet for a few hours, I think my tastes have changed. Booger, Ranma says as if reading from a list. Yes, hello, Ranma. Ryoga looks at his friend, trying to decipher what he meant. Kane rolls her eyes and explains to Ryoga, Ranma's offering me $50 to say some stupid word on a live news report. Ranma corrects her, not some stupid word. Booger. Kane ignores Ranma and continues, but I'm not doing it. I'm a journalist. Besides, I'm going to be promoted to the City Hall beat pretty soon. Lily high-fived Akane, congratulating her. Ranma stared at Akane as if she said something stupid. What? Journalist? You do the little fluff pieces at the end of the news. Besides, now you're saying nipple, and it's $100. Kane rolled her eyes at Ranma, now completely ignoring him, especially since he started to lure her into his web. Ryoga took a sip of the drink in front of him before realizing he had not ordered yet. Whose bourbon is this? Oh, I don't know. It was there when we sat down, Lily answers, then goes back to chatting with Akane. Ryoga drinks more of the bourbon. Thing is, I seem to like bourbon now, and I thought I didn't like it. First the bandana, then the bourbon. Spent all this time figuring out what I was like, and what was ruining my life, and now I just don't know anymore. Maybe it's time to revisit old girlfriends. Maybe someone who wasn't right for me back then is right for me now. Ranma interrupted. Hold on. There are only 2 reasons to date a girl you've already dated. Ranma holds up one finger and continues. Breasts, then puts up a second finger. Implant. breast implants. As usual, everyone ignored Ranma. Lily smiled, getting into the conversation. It's not a bad idea. Let's think. Ryoga's greatest dates. What about Mai? Ryoga coughed and then said, Mai used to live in LA. She was broke and spent a month doing adult films. 175 adult films. Lily sighed, conceding the point. Say what you will about the porn industry, they are hard workers. Marshall tossed in an idea. What about that chick, Jackie? Ranma's eyes opened in fear. I remember I had told Jackie an embarrassing story about being at the hot springs one day. She then told me of her hit and run and how she didn't stop. Everyone nodded that it would be a bad idea to go back to Jackie. Lily finally came up with the answer. What about Asusa? Marshall and Ted Marshall and Ryoga. Man, see, this is what happens when you're borrowing from things. Looked at each other and in unison said, Asusa. Akane now was really confused. Who's Asusa? I had a lot of fond memories about Asusa. A random collection of favorite things, caramel dancing music in the background, and stuffed animals throughout her place. It was 3 years earlier, and the Ryoga of back then just wasn't ready for a big commitment. Of course, things had changed, and getting married sounded pretty good right then, so I started going through my room for her number. It was while I was there, with the TV in my room on so I wouldn't get lost, that I heard the strangest news report from your Aunt Akane. Ryoga was digging through his closet. From the small 12-inch TV in his room, Akane's voice could be heard. So next time you're passing City Hall, make sure you stop by New York's oldest hot dog cart. Though it'll cost you $2.50 today, when it started 50 years ago, you could get one for a single nipple. Reporting live, Akane Tendo, Metro News 1. Ryoga kept digging in the closet, and what could have been moments or hours later, he heard Akane talking to Lily out in the living room. Akane sounded upset. I said nipple on the news. That was so unprofessional. I said nipple on the news. Lily put her arm around Akane to console her and stated, At least it wasn't booger. Booger. Ranma suddenly came in through the front door of Ryoga and Marshall's two-bedroom apartment. He walked up to Akane, his face beaming. Ah, there she is. Oh, it's kinda chilly in here. It must be because I can see Akane's nickels. Now for your next challenge. Akane cut him off. There won't be a next challenge. I'm not doing this anymore, Ranma. No matter how much you offer me. Ranma shook his head no. Oh, search your soul, Akane. You know this isn't about the money. It's about putting one over those jerks that haven't promoted you yet. It's about being underappreciated. Yeah, sure, the money on the side is nice. At this point, Ranma brought his face close to Kane's, took out $200 bills from his jacket pocket, and as he approached, he said, Now for 2 more $100, Baby's going to look in the camera and say this. At this point, Ranma whispers quietly into Akane's ear. Lily was absolutely shocked. That's so ew! At least I'm assuming. Akane just sighed after Ranma was done whispering. I have to get back to work. She got up and was passing by Ranma when she turned around and took the 200 from him. Baby's going to think about it. Lily gave Akane a goodbye wave, and not long after she left, Ryoga found his way out of his room. I finally found my way out! Oh, and the phone number too. Lily looked at Ryoga. Hey Ryoga, nice bandana. Is it yesterday already? Ryoga, completely missing the sarcasm, thanked Lily's compliment, and then dialed the number to Asusa Shiratori. Now, it had been 3 years since I had spoken to Asusa, and then I didn't know if she would remember me. But she did. As soon as I said what my name was, she hung up on me. I sat down with Aunt Lily, Uncle Marshall, and Uncle Ranma to figure it all out. Okay, I'm going to take a little break to drink. Ranma sat at the recliner at Ryoga's left, and Lily and Marshall sat on the love seat to his right. Ryoga sat by himself on the couch. Ranma was playing a game against Marshall on the Xbox in the living room. Ranma seemed to be winning, so he took the time to ask Ryoga some questions. Did you sleep with her sister or her mom? No, Ryoga replied. I'm losing interest already, Ranma continued to play, beating Marshall again. Well, why did you guys break up? Lily asked, trying to figure it all out. He wasn't ready for a commitment, Marshall replied, knowing the answer. Although that shouldn't make her pissed off at you. Well, her birthday might have been coming up. Lily didn't like where things were headed. Uh-huh, Ryoga continued, and I didn't want to give her a boyfriend-style gift if I was going to break up with her. Lily tried to look on the bright side. So you broke up with her right before her birthday? No, I didn't dump her right before her birthday. Ryoga started to get nervous at how Lily was looking at him now. Uh-oh, Marshall and Ranma both said at the same time. That's when your Aunt Lily jumped me and started hitting me. I got a little dizzy. You never break up with a girl on her birthday! Lily punctuated each word with a pounding to Ryoga's thick skull. Lily, stop! I know it was a mistake. Ryoga put his guard up against Lily, who was still on top of him. In a calmer voice, she looked at him, and without moving off, she asked, Well, did she cry her eyes out? I don't know, Ryoga smiled sheepishly. I had left a message on her answering machine. If I remember correctly, my words were, Hey, Asuza, look, you're great, really great. I'm just really lost right now, so maybe we should call it a day, but you're great. On her answering machine? And on her birthday? Oh, who breaks up with somebody on their answering machine on their birthday? Lily was starting to get tired of hitting Ryoga. Yeah, dude, email, Marshall said, glancing away from the game long enough to give Ryoga an incredulous look. That's not the point, Marshall. It's a terrible way to break up with someone. Lily looked at her fiancé like he was stupid. Okay, in my client's defense, is there a nice way to break up with someone? No. Personally, I'd rather hear the bad news on an answering machine than face the humiliation in person, Marshall said. Lily started dialing the number while Marshall finished up. It's the least painful way you can do it. Who are you calling? Lily speaks into her phone. Hi, Marshall, it's Lily. We're not going to have sex for at least a month, but you're great. Okay, bye-bye. And she hangs up the mobile phone. Ranma stops playing the game and starts flipping through TV channels. You know, it was a big mistake. You should have done it in person. Lily smiled and nodded until Ranma continued talking. Desperate please don't leave me sex is amazing. Ryoga put his hands up. Okay, I know it was childish and stupid, but I don't think I could watch her cry. Lily got close to Ryoga again, her finger pointing right in his face. Well, you know what, Ryoga? She did cry. You just didn't have the balls to face it. Hey, Ryoga interjected. This is the new old banana wearing Ryoga with balls. I'm gonna make this right. Just then, Ranma turned the TV volume up, and a report from Akane showed up. An occasion that was supposed to be joyous turned tragic, when Eunice and Sasha Margulis, the oldest twins in America, suddenly passed away on the eve of their 100th birthday. I'm a dirty, dirty girl. Gani bends over and smacks her rear. Ow! Reporting live, Akane Tendo, Metro News 1. She didn't even get reprimanded for it. In fact, her manager said she was doing a great job. That's when Aunt Akane realized that no one watched Metro News 1. Not even her manager. So that's chapter 2. I think that got merged with a different chapter. Ended up with chapter 3 extended. Let me go to the chapter 1 extended, because I was noticing all the notes on there, so forgot I had done a little bit of editing on this to get it onto another platform. Let's see how far chapter 1 goes here. Cork champagne, blah blah blah. We got to the Asuza one, so this is chapter 2. Okay, so the chapter 2 extended should be chapter 3. Okay. Ryoga Hibiki walks up to his home, an old two-story Japanese home facing Mount Fuji. The home is in good repair, and he can hear his kids playing inside. He opens the front door and is greeted by the sounds of family. I'm home! I told you to stop trying to sell photos of me in the shower to your perverted friends. Ryoga's daughter yells as she slammed her fist into her brother's face. Ah, good, you're both home. Then get your brother into the living room. I have more to tell you. Ryoga smiled as his son lay on the floor, his right leg twitching every once in a while. Knock, knock, knock. Ryoga quickly followed up by holding up a stuffed black pig to the peephole. After a moment, the door opened and Asuza was looking right at Ryoga. Go away, she screamed while trying to take the pig from him at the same time. I just want to say I'm sorry, Ryoga tried to explain, as she was now hitting him with the fire extinguisher from the hallway and shouting something about Charlotte. Look, I know you're mad, but here, happy birthday, 3 years ago. Ryoga let her have the pig. Asuza squeezed her new prize tightly, then gave Ryoga the coldest, cruelest gaze his 27-year-old self had ever experienced. Screw you, 3 years ago. She spit the words at him and then went back to her apartment. Ryoga followed her, letting the door close behind him. I know leaving a message was stupid. I know how much it sucked. No, you don't, she answered him, sadness gripping her eyes. My friend Mikado was throwing a surprise birthday party for me. You left that message, and everyone there heard it. I came home right after you had called. I had heard the phone in the hallway, and I was even rushing so that I wouldn't miss your call. Ryoga looked shocked. There was a surprise party that night, and no one told me? Oh, never mind, not the point. Look, Asuza, I know I was stupid. I was a stupid kid back then. I'm different now. Asuza stared at Ryoga. Oh, so now you're ready to get married and settle down? Ryoga sheepishly nodded in response. Asuza continued to look at him as if he was crazy. You must think I have no self-respect. Come on, just 1 cup of coffee? Ryoga smiled, picking up a teddy bear that Asuza had in her living room and pretended to make the teddy talk. Please, Asuza, give him a chance. Self-respect is overrated. Asuza laughed. They started dating again. It was just like before. It seemed that happily ever after wasn't far off. A couple weeks later, your Aunt Akane invited us all to go ice skating. The Nico Hanten was somewhat active as Ryoga, Asuza, Ranma, Marshall, and Lily sat together talking. Just then, Akane came in with a big smile. Say I'm awesome. You're awesome, Ryoga said, looking confused. Why are you awesome this time? Akane pulled up a seat next to Ranma's chair and said, because I just got us invited to an exclusive ice skating party tonight. The organizer goes to my gym and is a big fan of my reporting on Metro News 1, so I'm on the list and I can bring 4 guests. Well, count us out, sorry. We're having friends over for wine and cheese tasting. Marshall looked slightly put out, but smiled and held Lily's hand. Yeah, we're trying to grow up classy. Well, Ranma, Ryoga? Akane looked over at them. Sure, Ranma said. We'll be there. Ryoga looked over at Asuza, then at Akane. Akane nodded and said, Great. And Ryoga, don't forget to bring your date. Ryoga smiled at Asuza, who got up to leave. Thanks for the invite. I'll meet you all there. I gotta go back to work. Bye, sweetie. She kissed Ryoga and left. After Asuza left, Ryoga sighed and put his face in his hands, leaning on the table. By the time he looked back up, Akane had left, and Ranma was now sitting on the bench next to him. Ryoga said, I have to break up with her. Marshall looked over at Ryoga. I don't get it. Asuza's awesome. Ryoga nodded. I know, she's great, but I have to break up with her. Suddenly, Lily was on top of Ryoga's head, smacking him with a beer mug with each word. She said, "Why couldn't you leave that poor girl alone?" "I know," Ryoga lamented, unfazed by the attacks. "These past 2 weeks have been great, and I should be in love with her. But I'm not. I can't explain it." "So, when are you going to break up with her?" Marshall asked, getting his fiancée off of Ryoga. Ranma smiled and said, "She's probably on subway now. You could call her voicemail. Beep, dumped, click, done." "No, not this time. I have to do it face to face. I just don't know what to say." Ryoga looked down at his drink. "I already told her I'm ready for a commitment, so saying I'm not ready won't work." "Even if it would have, I think Asuza deserves better," Lily said after having calmed down. "There's no better in breaking up," Marshall put in. "There's only less awful. There's no way out. By Kami, I'm gonna have to marry her." Ryoga grabbed his head and screamed to the heavens. "No, don't worry, we'll figure something out." Marshall tried to calm Ryoga down. "How about, it's not you, it's me." Or, Ranma broke in, 6 words. "You look fat in those jeans." "Ryoga, why don't you tell her the truth?" Lily asked. "What is the truth? Why do you want to break up with her?" "The truth?" Ryoga paused and thought about it. "The truth is, she's not the one." "So tell her that," Lily said. So it was decided. I was going to tell Asuza the truth. We all met up at the ice ring. Me, your Uncle Ranma, your Aunt Akane, and Asuza. Ryoga got out of the taxi with Ranma coming around the other side. Ranma put his hand on Ryoga's shoulder and smiled at him. "I'm glad you finally put a suit on." "Yeah, gotta break her heart in style, right?" Ryoga said, looking a little depressed. "Well, you can do it on the ice. Just tell her and then let her go. That way you can make your getaway," Ranma said as he guided Ryoga into the building. They met up with Akane and Asuza, who were waiting by the door. Asuza ran up and kissed Ryoga, and he walked in hand. Ranma snorted, and Akane gave Ryoga a quick smile. Inside, the party was beautiful, several tables with different foods on them. There was a bar in the patio where just outside Lady Liberty could be seen. "Very nice party, Tendo." Ranma smiled. "Thanks for inviting us." "Yes, thank you, Akane. But you said there was ice skating?" Asuza beamed. "Yeah, over there. They have skate rentals and everything," Akane pointed the way. "I'll be there soon. I have to go thank the guy who gave me the invitations." Ryoga, Ranma, and Asuza said, "See you soon," and went over to go skating. After paying for both their rentals, Ryoga and Asuza were soon skating through the ice. The rink looked like it was multi-use, with some faint markings left from when they have hockey games. Though Ryoga had no problems on the ice, Asuza was skating as if she were a pro. "Wow, you're really good," Ryoga praised Asuza as Ranma passed by and nearly slammed into a wall after having trouble stopping. "You're not too bad yourself," Asuza smiled. "And definitely better than Ranma over there." They both danced around each other, back and forth, as they skated around the rink. Ryoga pulled over to one of the walls to stop for a bit, and soon was joined by Asuza. She smiled at him radiantly, clearly in her element. He smiled at her and said, "Look, Asuza, I need to say something to you." "Let me say something first," she smiled at him. "Today, I had not 1, not 2, but 3 birthday cakes. So do you think that tonight we can just skip the cake?" Ryoga stared at her, color draining from his face. "Today is your birthday? I didn't get you anything." "It's okay. You gave me the greatest gift of all," Asuza hugged Ryoga, then pulled back and beamed at him. "I can trust again." "Oh, Kami." "Asuza, I have to tell you something, and there's no good way of telling you. I really like you, but we have to break up. I don't think you're the one for me. I don't want to waste your time, and I think you deserve to know now instead of later. I thought it would be for the best to be honest," Ryoga said. Asuza covered her face with her hands, and Ryoga patted her shoulder. "It's okay, they're only tears." Suddenly, Asuza grabbed Ryoga's hand and twisted it around his back. She turned them so that she could use the wall as a brace and launched him into the ice. She screamed at him, "What do you mean I'm not the one?" Ryoga spun and caught himself. He timidly skated back to her. "I'm sorry, I thought it would be the mature thing to do." Asuza cut him off. "It's my birthday!" "I know, I didn't realize it was your birthday." "Okay, so what's the problem?" Asuza skated up to Ryoga and stood in front of him, looking up into his eyes. "I can't explain it." Ryoga smiled weakly. "Try!" Asuza spoke forcibly, causing Ryoga to cringe a little. Oh, I don't know," Ryoga sighed. "I'll tell you what it is. You broke my heart over a machine on my birthday. Then you waited 3 years, tracked me down, begged me to go out with you, just so you could dump me on my birthday." "It's not that. I'm really lost right now." Ryoga backed away from Asuza. Then Akane came over. "Hey, I want you guys to meet the one who invited me here. Ryoga, Asuza, this is Mikado." Asuza skated over to Mikado and cried into his chest, "Mikado, Ryoga dumped me on my birthday again." Akane stared at Ryoga in shock, and Mikado put his arm around Asuza's shoulders to comfort her. He stared Ryoga down and said, "You will not leave her heart broken and escape unscathed this time. We'll show you why we were once called a golden pair of anything-goes martial arts skating." Honestly, after the first attack, I was knocked out. By the time I came to, I was in the hospital with Uncle Ranma and Akane standing over me. Ryoga looked over at his 2 teenage children as they listened to his story, and regardless of how much they voiced their opinions of being bored, at least they were paying attention. He continued, "But it's the bad times that helps prepare you for the good times. And after seeing me have such a bad time at it, your Aunt Akane made a suggestion. So, as I lay there and they filled me in on what happened after the fight, Kane told me about a dating service that she had recently done a piece on for Metro News 1. They had a 100% success rate. I told her I wasn't going to go, but somehow your Uncle Ranma tricked me into going." Ryoga finished the application at Love Solutions, then looked at Ranma and said, "Your boat is sinking." "That's a good one." "This is a great opportunity, Ryoga. We'll meet our soulmates, nail them, and then never call them again," Ranma chuckled. Ryoga sat next to Ranma, waiting for their turn to speak with the matchmaker of Love Solutions. The waiting room was comfortable, and Ryoga looked at pictures on the walls of all the different happy couples. Soon, a frog-like voice greeted them both. Ryoga turned around to see a short old woman standing behind him. Her hair was long, straight, and very healthy looking. Her eyes carried a soft compassion that drew Ryoga into them. She quickly motioned for the two to follow her, and led them into her office. They all sat down, and over the maple desk between them, the old lady smiled. "I am Cologne, and I'm here to help you find the love of your life." "Oh, thank goodness, Cologne." Ranma looked at the matchmaker's eyes. "I'm so tired of the single life, all the games, and meaningless sex." Cologne nodded. "You deserve more." "That's true," Ranma smiled. "I really think I'm ready. Is there any way to let it be known that I love cuddling?" Ryoga looked at Ranma funny, but Ranma continued. "It's kind of hard to talk about it with Ryoga here, but I just want someone to hold me at night when the tears come. Can you help me?" Cologne looked at the 2 applications, looked at Ranma and seethed. "Get out! I'm not going to help a jerk like you. I get guys like you all the time just wanting to meet vulnerable women, nail them, and then never call them again." "Do people do that?" Ranma looked appalled. Cologne grabbed the staff that was leaning up against the wall behind her. In the heartbeat of a hummingbird, she had slammed the staff's end into Ranma's chest, launching him up against the wall. She glared at him and said, "You're 300 years too early to pull that over on me." Ranma pulled himself out of the wall and straightened out his suit. "Ryoga, let's go." Cologne interrupted. "No, Ryoga, you stay." Ranma looked at Cologne one last time, deciding if he could actually take her or not. Deciding against it, he leaves the office. Ryoga and Cologne sit back down. She smiles at him. "You're cute. An architect. Good career. I can work with this. I can find the woman you will marry in 3 days." Ryoga shook his head. No thanks, I don't need an algorithm to meet women. It's a big city, there's plenty of women out there. Cologne smiled at Ryoga. Yes, the Big Apple. It's a very big city. 19 million people. 9.7 million women. Of course you want to meet someone about your age, give or take a few years. If we look at the recent census data, that's 412,000. Of course, 48% of those are already in a relationship, and you have to eliminate half of those for intelligence, sense of humor, and compatibility. Then take out ex-girlfriends and relatives. Not to mention not counting all those pesky lesbians. And all that leaves us is 8 women. Ryoga was floored. He stared at Cologne for a moment, mouth agape. That can't be right. 8? Only 8? Cologne hopped on her desk and walked across it to Ryoga. There are only 8 women in all of New York. If you feel you can find them without my help, then there's the door. She gestured to the office door that Ranma had just left a minute before. So I agreed to it. 5 days later, I still hadn't heard back from her, so I decided to check on Cologne and see what was going on. Ryoga knocked on Cologne's office door before opening it and letting himself in. She sat behind the desk, her face ragged and worrisome. All around her were star charts and element boards. On the walls were planet graphs and zodiac paths. On her computer screen, a Chippendale screensaver. Smiling nervously, Ryoga greeted Cologne. She looked at him, sadness in her eyes. Ryoga began to look worried. Hi, it's Ryoga. Do you remember me? Cologne nodded, apologizing. I meant to call you. When the computer failed to turn up a suitable match, I started going through the highest ranked candidates to look for any abnormalities in their destiny that would make you both compatible. Things that computer has trouble finessing. But you said it would only take 3 days. Ryoga expressed his confusion. You said there was at least 8 women out there for me. I'm an architect, a martial artist. You said I was cute. How do you think I feel? For 300 years, I've had a 100% success rate. It's why people come to me. I found several matches if you were gay. I'm not gay, Ryoga replied flatly. Not even a little bi? You're kidding me, right? Ryoga said, exasperated. I tried everything, Ryoga. I even stood out on the street for 5 hours showing your photo to random pedestrians. Cologne lamented. You're gonna find someone for me, Ryoga said to her, and she began to drink some wine. No, I won't. You're gonna die alone. Cologne took another drink of wine and began to pour another glass. You're only going to get older and older, and it will only get harder. No, I'm not going to die alone, Ryoga said, getting some wind in his sails. It isn't hopeless. My heart of glass couldn't survive in this world alone, and I refuse to let it. I'm done with being depressed about this. Maybe your charts will help, maybe it won't, but it will happen. Cologne stared at him, his whole attitude transfigured under pressure, his emotional coal pressurized, granting him a heart made of diamond. So I should keep looking, she asked him. Ryoga smiled. Of course you should. Now you're going to do it for free. Cologne agreed as long as I didn't make the story public. She got to keep her guarantee, and I went on with my life, pretty much forgetting about Love Solutions. Until the night we all met up at Nikohanten, where your Uncle Ranma found a solution to my girl problems. Soft music played through the air of the Nikohanten. Moose walked up to the booth where Ryoga and his 4 friends were sitting. He set 5 blood-red drinks in front of them and said, On the house, it's my own concoction. I call it the Dead Duck. They all said, Wow, thanks, Moose. Moose went back to the bar and Ryoga quickly asked in a whispered tone, We're not really going to do shots, are we? Ranma and Lily shook their head no, and Akane picked one up. After she stared at it, she said, This kinda looks like blood. Marshall started looking nervous. He timidly asked, I know you've all dismissed this theory before, but is there any chance that Moose is a vampire? Ranma snorted. Yeah, and I transform into a girl when splashed with cold water. I'm serious, think about it. He always wears black. We never see him in the daylight, only after dark. Marshall ticked off the points on his finger. Akane nodded. You know, that does describe a vampire. Or a bartender, she laughed, with everyone else, except Marshall, who became pensive. Akane checked her watch and excused herself. Where are you going? Hot date? Ryoga asked. Not exactly. A coworker scored tickets to an MMA fight. Akane answered. Everyone said their goodbyes and she hurried so she wouldn't be late. Marshall looked over at Ryoga and asked, Are you okay? Sure, why? Girl of your dreams at an MMA fight with some other guy? You know how martial artists get her going, Marshall explained. Okay, first of all, the coworker isn't a martial artist. He's probably just some overweight fanboy. Second, she's not the girl of my dreams. We're just friends. It wouldn't work out, Ryoga explained. He continued. I want to settle down, she wants. Ryoga was interrupted by Ranma's story. The three of them stare at a bit until his head starts to lean forward and he wakes up and asks, Are you done, Ryoga? Because if you are, there's a girl over there that's really hot. She's kind of short but stacked. Should go over and talk to her. What am I going to say to her? Daddy's home, Ranma answered with a goofy smile on his face. Daddy's home. Ryoga started to wonder why he hung out with Ranma. Think about that, Ranma. You want us to go up to those girls and say Daddy's home. Ranma stood up and paused. He looked at the girls, then back to Ryoga. Ranma straightened the red tie he was wearing and nodded. Yeah, I think it'll work. Ranma walked over to the table in the corner of the Nikohanten where 5 girls seemed to be out for a girls' night. Marshall asked, Is there anything on the menu with garlic on it? Lily pointed to the garlic fries, and after a moment Marshall said, I'll get back to you on that. Soon, Ranma came back with a Saotomi cocky bastard smile on his face and a yellow piece of paper in his hand. Daddy's back. See, Ryoga, if I had thought about what I was doing, I wouldn't have this sweetly written 7-digit love note from Amy. Ryoga stared, fully aware that the cosmos were a big joke. That worked? I hate the world. Ryoga, your problem is that you get nervous and you start overanalyzing things. Then you start thinking they hate you and you run away. Ranma summed up Ryoga's problem with meeting new women. It's just the way I am. It can't be helped, Ryoga lamented. Oh, yes it can. Ranma put one of the dead duck shots in front of Ryoga. Interesting, Marshall commented, his curiosity piqued. Ryoga, Ranma began, I believe we met for a reason. It's like Destiny was saying, Hey, Ranma, you have all that extra confidence and awesomeness. Why don't you share? Ranma pushed Ryoga's head with a finger as if he was trying to bore into Ryoga's skull. Your thick skull makes it hard for you to let out your insecurities. It happened with Akane. It happened with Short Stacked. And it's going to keep happening until you get over it. With some serious anything-goes style inebriation. Ryoga shook his head. You want me to do a shot? No, Ryoga. I want you to do 5 shots. Ranma answered sincerely. Even more interesting, Marshall smiled, getting excited. Ryoga, I think he's right. You need to drink. Suddenly, Marshall and Ranma started chanting, Drink, drink, drink. Ryoga was getting frustrated. Lily, help me out. Can you tell them they're being stupid? Lily nodded. You guys are being immature and moronic, and drink, drink, drink. Ryoga sat there as they continued chanting. He tried covering his ears. He tried Buddhist chanting. He tried Zen meditation. Finally, he gave up and took a shot of dead duck. This isn't going to work anyways, Ryoga began as they continued to chant. I have a strong body. Alcohol cannot stop me. Ryoga drank 2 more shots. Not even any effect yet, he said, as he had a 4th shot. I've got a super high constitution. The last thing I remember was the 5th shot. I had a few hazy memories of a jungle and a cell phone, but the next thing I remembered, I was waking up the next morning. Ryoga groaned as he slowly woke up. His head felt like someone had slammed the business end of an axe into it and started shaking it back and forth. He rolled to his right to get a look at the time and groaned again. The big red number showed 801. That had to be bad luck. Slowly sitting up, every muscle and hair in his body screamed in agony. He sat there on the edge of the bed, willing his body to stand, but nothing happened. After a while, he looked back at his clock. Now it said 9:07. Must have passed out again, he thought. His mind screamed at him a little bit less. It was then that Ryoga noticed the most peculiar thing he had ever imagined seeing on his nightstand. A pineapple. Must have gotten lost, he thought to himself again. Grunting, Ryoga slipped on his pajama bottoms and a long-sleeved white shirt. He stood up and immediately regretted it. His ankle gave out under him and sent jolts of pain up his leg and spine. Bracing himself and favoring his left leg, Ryoga wondered what had happened the night before. He remembered drinking the dead duck shots. That was all. Ryoga heard some shuffling and looked back at the bed. Someone was sleeping in it. A woman was sleeping in his bed. What happened last night? Who did he get together with? Ryoga headed out of his room and found Marshall and Lily sitting on the couch in their pajamas watching television. Watching television. Lily heard him limping towards them, and after looking to see how he was, with a big smile on her face, she greeted him. Good morning, mister. I can handle 5 shots. How did you sleep last night? Ryoga sat on the recliner and looked at his friends. Guys, what happened last night? Lily sat up excited. You don't remember? We'll tell you. I've got a super high constitution. Ryoga quickly drank the last shot. Okay, Ryoga, what are you gonna do? Ranma asked. I'm gonna call Akane. Ryoga got up and started dialing. He waited with the phone in his ear and then started talking. Hey, Akane, yeah, so how's it going? You know, you're great. Yeah, I know, you're... Okay, I'll talk to you later. Lily got up, and after Ryoga was done with the phone, she took it from him. No, Ryoga, friends don't let friends drink and call. You can have this back when you're sober. Ranma walked up to her and quickly took the phone from her and returned it to Ryoga. Here you go, Ryoga, do what you want. You can't do that. Lily tried to stop Ryoga, but he had moved over to the jukebox. Lily, the whole purpose of this is to get him to loosen up. Ranma tried to calm Lily down. Suddenly some music started playing. Ryoga, no, you wouldn't. Marshall shook his head. Lily and Ranma sat back down and watched as Ryoga stood up on a square table and speed dialed his last call. Ryoga started singing the song out of sync into the phone. Since I met you before, something is shining deep in my mind. Something made me feel lonely. That's why I closed my eyes. Nothing special about what you did, and nothing special about what you said. Reminds me of... Ah! Ryoga had been singing and dancing when he fell off the table. Marshall and Lily hurried over and helped Ryoga up to his feet. He had twisted his ankle, so they helped him up to his apartment and helped him into bed. The whole time going upstairs, he told them how much he loved them. We love you too, drunk Ryoga. Marshall laughed at his friend. You guys are the best friends ever. Ryoga smiled up at them before getting comfortable in the bed. And then we went to bed. Lily finished telling the story to Ryoga. Well, that explains why my ankle hurts. But who was I with last night? Ryoga asked. Suddenly and quietly, Lily and Marshall rushed over to the door of Ryoga's room. They peeked inside and were struck dumbfounded. Ryoga limped up to them, his ankle already improving. The couple closed the door and stared at Ryoga. Lily asked what was eating away at her thoughts. There's a girl on your bed. Why is there a girl on your bed? Who is she? And the pineapple. Where did the pineapple come from? Marshall asked. Ryoga gasped and picked up his jacket that was strewn on the table by his bedroom door. Guys, look at my jacket. Ryoga picked it up and showed his friends the huge hole that was burned on the back of it. Ryoga said, Maybe I went back downstairs. If you did, then Ranma might have seen you. Let's call him. Marshall reached over to the desk that sat by the window where they were at and dialed Ranma's phone number before handing the phone over to Ryoga. Ryoga stood there with the phone up to his ear waiting for it to ring. Suddenly all three could hear a phone ringing from the bathroom. They rushed over They rushed and limped over to investigate. Pulling back the shower curtain, they found Ranma, in his suit, sleeping in the bathtub. Ryoga asked them why he was there. Ranma greeted them and explained, "The porcelain keeps the suit from wrinkling." Lily suddenly realized something. "Wait, were you awake in there when I used the bathroom this morning?" "What? No. I didn't hear you pee. Oh, by the way, you have a pretty large tank for such a small girl." Ranma smiled as he got up. "So, Ranma, did you see me again last night after Marshall and Lily brought me upstairs?" "Oh yeah, you came back all right. I'll tell you about it. It was about an hour later at 9 when Ryoga came back downstairs." Ranma smiled as they all moved to the living room. Ryoga entered the Nikohanten with a smile and a wave of his arms. He greeted them. "Hey, I'm back." Ranma looked up from his place at the bar and smiled a triumphant smile at his friend Ryoga. Waving his friend over, Ranma ordered a beer for him. "Welcome back, Ryoga. Good for you. Now, you ready to pick up some girls?" Ranma asked, a patented Saotomi super happy smile on his face. "Oh yeah." Ryoga grinned, accepting the drink. "Perfect, because I got a beauty over here all lined up for you. Follow me." Ranma turned around and walked over to a blonde woman sitting alone at a small table. He smiled at her as he sat down and said, "Hello, have you met Ryoga?" Ranma noticed a blank look on her face and turned around to find Ryoga had walked away and was on his phone. Sighing, he excused himself from the girl and walked up to Ryoga. "Ryoga, what do you think you're doing?" "I'm calling Akane," Ryoga said, as he tried to find her number on his phone. "Ryoga, I forbid you from calling Akane. You need to move on from that. Find a girl that's here so that you can get past this whole Akane phase." Ranma tried to take the phone from Ryoga, but Ryoga dodged his attempts. "You know what?" Ranma conceded. "Go ahead and call her. But if you do, I'm going to set your clothes on fire." Ryoga found Akane's number and called. He held up the phone to his ear and said, "Hey Akane, I just wanted to let you know." "Ah!" Ranma looked at Ryoga's burnt jacket. "Real suede wouldn't have gone up so fast. This is a blend. You've been robbed." Ryoga stared at his friend. "You set me on fire?" After calming down some, Ryoga asked, "So what happened after that?" Ranma shrugged his shoulders and said, "After I hosed you down with the beer gun, I brought you upstairs and put you to bed." "And no one was with me?" Ryoga asked, starting to get frustrated with the whole situation. Ranma stared at Ryoga, then rushed over to his friend's room. Quietly opening the door, he looked at the girl sleeping face down on Ryoga's bed. Ranma closed the door and turned back to the group. "There's a girl in your bed. Who is she? Is she alive?" "I don't know," Ryoga answered, scratching an itch on his arm. "Nice." Ranma smiled at his friend. "Did you notice the pineapple? Am I the only one curious about the pineapple?" Marshall asked. Ryoga shook his head and continued scratching his right arm. He pulled the sleeve back up when he noticed something very strange. "Guys, look at this." Ryoga held up his exposed arm for the group to see. On the inside of it were the words, "My name is Ryoga. If you find me, call 347-555-1901. "Call the number," Marshall whispered, entranced and excited. Ryoga dialed the number and waited. Hello, who's this?" "You called me. Who are you?" came the annoyed voice from the other side of the phone. This is Ryoga," Ryoga grimaced, waiting for the answer. "Oh, Ryoga, this is Moose from the bar," the voice on the other end of the phone said. Ryoga put the phone on speaker and asked Moose what happened the night before. "You came downstairs and immediately announced that you were going to throw up. You went to the bathroom. About 10 minutes later you came back, talking about wanting to visit penguins. So I wrote my number on your arm so that if you got in trouble I could go pick you up. That's when you decided that you were going to call Akane. After that, you went outside and got into a cab." "Thanks, Moose." Ryoga hung up the phone and looked at his friends. "It's Akane." Okami, what does this mean?" Ryoga stood up and started pacing, limping only once in a while. "I think you need to go in there and talk to her," Lily stated sagely. "You're right." Ryoga walked into his bedroom, his friends excitedly waiting in the living room. Ryoga approached the other side of the bed when his phone rang. Quickly answering it, he shook his head. "Are you sure?" he asked to the phone before coming back out of the room. "What's going on?" Marshall asked, confused. Ryoga stared at them. "It's not Akane." She just called and she's on her way over. Ranma looked confused. If it's not Akane, who is it? Suddenly, a tall, beautiful brunette came out of Ryoga's room. She was only wearing an oversized t-shirt and house slippers. She said, "Hi, my name is Makoto. Sorry about this." She smiled nervously and then told them what happened the night before. At the Nikohanten, Makoto sat with four of her friends. She took a sip of wine in both of her in front of her and made her announcement. "You know, I have half a mind to just hook up with the next guy I see. After breaking up with my last boyfriend, I just want to get back in the saddle." Her friends raised their glass to toast her proclamation. Slyly, a tall, well-dressed Ranma with a pigtail hairstyle walked up to them. He was kinda cute, until he said, "Daddy's home." The girls shuddered and stared at him as if he were a lunatic. "Maybe the next guy after him," Makoto quickly whispered to her friends with a laugh. Ranma grimaced, but simply stated, "Fair enough." Then, as Ranma grabbed the pen out of his pocket and started writing something down on one of the napkins, he looked at one of Makoto's friends sitting across from her and said, "Your name is now Amy, and you just gave me your phone number. I have to convince my friend about something." As Ranma walked away, Amy looked at the others, slightly disturbed, and asked, "How did he know my name?" Later on, Makoto laughed with her friends as Ryoga sang and then fell off the table. "He's kinda cute," she laughed. Her friends made fun of her that he was the third cute guy already that night, and that anyone would make her say that. As the night was coming to a close, her girlfriends had to leave. Makoto went to the restroom to wash her hands. Scaring her, the dark-haired Ryoga came out of the bathroom stall behind her. He stared at her and asked, "What are you doing in the men's bathroom?" "Wait, what am I doing in the women's bathroom?" Makoto turned around and looked at him. "What are you doing in the women's restroom?" She emphasized the words. "I came in here to throw up," he smiled. "And did you?" she asked him. "Nope." He walked up to her and started washing his hands boldly. Makoto laughed at him. He smiled at her and said, "I haven't thrown up since 1993. "Vomit free since 93, huh?" She laughed and he seemed to like the rhyme. Vomit free since 2005 doesn't sound as good." He smiled at her. Then, as he dried his hands, asked her, "Hey, I know we just met and all, but could I get your phone number?" "Sure," she smiled at him, and as he pulled out his phone, he seemed to be having trouble finding the numbers. She took the phone from him and told him she'd put it in for him. "My name's Makoto, by the way." She smiled at him, and she finished adding herself to his contacts list. Ryoga accepted his phone back and looked at the number she entered. He pressed dial and said to her, "My name's Ryoga, and—" "Oh, hey, it works." He hung up quickly. "And now you know my number." She smiled at him. "Hey, I have to go, okay?" They said their goodbyes to each other. It was only 10 minutes later, after Makoto had gotten into a cab, when she received a phone call from Ryoga. He convinced her to hook up that night. She had the cab turn around and pick up Ryoga. Makoto had just gotten to the point where Ryoga joined her in the cab, and there was a knocking on the door. Ryoga suddenly remembered that Akane was on her way. "Quick, hide in my room." Ryoga started trying to move Makoto. "What? Why? Is that your girlfriend?" Makoto started getting pissed off. "No, it's complicated," Ryoga tried to explain. "So she's your wife?" Makoto was now angry and hurt that she was always picking the wrong guy. "No," Ryoga's voice softened. "I'll explain it to you in a bit, but I need to talk to her first before she sees you." Makoto went into his room, and Ryoga rushed to answer the door. Akane walked in and was surprised to find all her friends over so early in the morning. "Listen, Ryoga, we need to talk about those phone calls last night." Lily and Marshall dragged Ranma into the kitchen, saying they suddenly had to check on the stove. Akane was glad they were giving her and Ryoga space to talk. She looked back at Ryoga, but before she could say anything, Ryoga said, "Look, I'm sorry about those calls last night." Akane was annoyed. "Ryoga, you have to move on. If you don't, we won't be able to stay friends." "I have moved on. I met someone last night." Ryoga explained. "Really? Because he kept leaving messages like this." Akane pulled out her phone and played one of the messages Ryoga had left on her phone the night before. She turned on the speaker and Ryoga's voice came through. "Hey, Kane, answer the phone. If you don't pick up, I'm gonna keep making this noise." Akane turned off the message and grimaced at Ryoga. That goes on for another 3 minutes, Akane clarified. 3 minutes without catching my breath? That has to be a world record, Ryoga laughed. Seriously, Ryoga, what are you going to do about this? Akane said, trying to break through his jokes. Akane, I really have moved on last night. I shut down my brain, and that's why you got those calls. But I really have moved on. I'll show you. Ryoga led her to his room and opened the door. Makoto, come out. It's okay now. Akane looked around. So you're going to show me your imaginary girlfriend? No, she was here. Ryoga noticed the window open. She must have gone down the fire escape. And that was that. Akane and I remained friends, and Makoto didn't return my phone calls. Sometimes you get drunk, and all that you get out of it is a headache, and a bad taste in your mouth. Either way, it's never a solution, Ryoga concluded. Dad, can we finish this later? I have homework, Ryoga-san interrupted, before his father could start up again. Sure. I'll talk to you guys tomorrow. Ryoga hugged his kids goodnight, and they fled to do homework, or meet up with friends. Alright. Then chapter 3 Extend is the last one. Let's take a... oops, I'm from the wrong thing. Alright, I want to thank everybody for hanging out tonight. We'll read more on Friday. And like I said, check out the archives. Please visit me on YouTube. Subscribe there. Follow me on Twitter. Pengoria Fallstar all the way. And for the people watching the stream on YouTube, please comment, like, and subscribe. And feel free to support me on Patreon, where I have original stories being written every month in small doses. I really appreciate it. Thank you so much.